Welcome to the Minnesota Rovers Tuesday evening presentation. Minnesota Rovers is an outdoors club based in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Our members organize trips that range from 1 hour to 2 weeks in Minnesota or further afield. Examples of our activities include hiking, biking, backpacking, skiing, snowshoeing, paddling, and rock climbing. We also organize conservation and trail clearing trips. Our members have experience and skills in many outdoor activities, so if you want to learn a new outdoor activity, we can probably help you. For more information, go to mnrovers.org. Now let's move on to this week's presentation.
Tonight we have Jesse Gates talking to us about the wonder of dark skies at Voyageurs National Park. I met Jesse at Voyageurs National Park, where he happened to be at a campsite that I was paddling up to use this summer, and we started talking. And Jesse is he's worked as an education specialist and as a ranger at various as a part season ranger at various national parks. And then this summer, while he was working at Voyageurs, he discovered Voyageurs Conservancy and took on a role as one of their education specialists, specializing in the Dark Skies project that's going on, because Voyageurs is now has been declared a national or an international dark skies area. So I'm looking forward to this presentation. Thanks for being here, Jesse. And we're looking forward to seeing some of your pictures.
Great, thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And while I'm getting that set up, sounds like you guys have an amazing organization. I want to second a lot of the things that I heard. The wilderness first responder is really good to know if you're doing outdoor stuff. And I love that you guys are offering these at affordable prices. I know that's a lot of the reason people have a hard time getting out into the outdoors is finances, and it seems like you guys are doing great things in regards to that. So just want to mention that before I start this. All right. So as it was beautifully introduced, my name is Jesse. I work for the Voyageurs Conservancy, and today I'm here to talk all about dark skies. And so a little bit about who we are, who are the Voyageurs Conservancy. We are the official nonprofit and philanthropic partner for Voyageurs National Park. And so what that means is we help out the park in many ways, whether that's through programming or bringing special speakers up or fundraising. Really, our mission is to connect people to Voyageurs National Park, enhance the experience that visitors have, and to protect the park and preserve it for present, but also for future generations. And so as far as what my job is, a lot of what I do, I'm the education specialist. So a huge chunk of my job is working with kids and working with the public. We do a lot of outdoor programming, which is a ton of fun. This is pictures from last fall. We've had some pond dipping, and we got out on the boat, some nature, education journaling. And actually over here in this bottom right corner, we have a really cool, exciting thing called our mobile classroom. And you can see in this picture, we have a really wonderful print of the park. On the other side of it, there's a dark sky kind of print. In any case, the mobile classroom is with the intent of bringing the park experience out to schools that can't make it to the park. So all these other pictures are schools that came out to the park and we delivered programming, but we're in the works of a mobile classroom, again, to bring the experience to them. So we're getting the blueprints all done on that, and I'm really stoked about that. So that's one component of my job. But the other one, as you know, is dark skies. And so dark skies are my all-time favorite thing to talk about and to present and to share with people. And so Voyageurs is a really dark place. You can just raise your hand up. Who here has been to Voyageurs National Park before? I can see a few Gotcha, there we go. Okay, awesome. A good amount of you. So for those of you who haven't, we are in northern Minnesota. And when I say northern, I mean really northern. I look at Canada every single day. That's how north I am right now. But we are also a really, really remote area. And that is why we have these wonderful starry views. And a big reason for that is we are removed from this thing that we call light pollution. Now, if you haven't heard of light pollution before, it's kind of a funny sounding term. You might say, how can light be pollution? We think of pollution as something that is harmful towards living things or towards the environment. But we're going to see in just a moment, light can be described as a form of pollution. It can be harmful when we're exposed to lots or excessive amounts of it. And so what we have here is a picture of the United States. And this is a satellite image. And it's crazy because even though we can't see the state borders on this, we can kind of see where everything is. We can see where all the big cities are located just based on these big, bright, prominent points of light. So we can see where all the major cities are just by the light that they produce. And this is, it's surely an issue going on in the country, but if we zoom out, you can see it's also a global issue. We can see light pollution is becoming a prominent part all over the globe. We're seeing big points of light from excessive amounts of light pollution. And when I talk about this, I'm not saying that all light is a bad thing. Surely light surrounds our everyday life, and in many ways it's beneficial. But light pollution is also, it has adverse effects in many different realms. To kind of quickly go over it, there's at least 4 different sections or 4 different main points in which light pollution causes harm. Surely there's more than that, but 4 big ones. We have 1, it affects a large range of wild animals. So it disturbs predator and prey interactions, especially in nocturnal animals. It affects mating habits. This is a crazy one. It affects birds, and some birds actually use stars to migrate. And so when there's so much light, birds are essentially having their map taken away from them. And then another thing that happens is as they're traveling from point A to point B, if there's big city lights in between those 2 points, a lot of times they go off course, and it is causing a huge uptick in deaths of birds. And as we all know, when one animal is affected by a global phenomenon, it's not really one animal, it's the larger ecosystem and kind of the trickle effect of other animals impacted as well. So that's one way in which light pollution negatively has a negative impact. A big one is that it affects humans. And this one I was very surprised by. I know I'm guilty of this. I was doing this literally last night. I probably do this more nights than I'd like to say out loud. But we have lights at us, shining at us all the time. And the reason this is a bad thing is that for the vast majority of human existence, that is, as long as humans have been a species, we've been exposed to usually regular periods of light in the daytime and then darkness, or the absence of light, at nighttime. And again, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that was the normal cycle of things. But recently, in like the last 100 years or so, that kind of balance has been disturbed. Now we have light in the daytime from the sun, and then also light at nighttime from when we have our phones blaring in our face and we're in Walmart and we have all those lights shining at us all the time. And the reason that this is a bad thing is that because our brains have kind of been hooked up in this way of usually experience light in the daytime and darkness at nighttime, our brains release a very special chemical known as melatonin. And it releases this when it's dark out, and it's kind of like a drowsy chemical. It's what allows us to go to sleep more easily. Well, now with so much light happening all the time, the light enters our eyes even at nighttime. It kind of confuses our brain. And what we're seeing is a lot of, for one, sleep disorders in the more recent decades, and then also all the health effects related to that. So it affects humans. it affects one thing is it erases the night sky, which is our attachment to history and to culture. So I picked only 8 images here to kind of represent that point. But the truth is I could have picked literally hundreds of images to say the same point, because literally no matter what point in time you go to, no matter where you go on planet Earth, you'll see that people have always been connected to the night sky. So in this picture, I have some Greek mythology, Ojibwe star chart, a picture representing the connection to the night sky in Japanese festivals, African culture, Arabic culture. But again, I could have chosen from literally hundreds of different pictures to prove the same point. And then the last one is when we erase the night sky with too much light pollution. It's kind of a way of erasing the environment to be inspired to look up and to just discover for the sake of discovering, because there's a lot of cool, just beautiful things out there waiting to be discovered. So that was kind of just a really quick summary of 4 different ways in which too much light pollution is a negative thing. Surely there's way more than that, but for the sake of time, I figured I'd condense it into 4 points. There is hope, though. There is this wonderful organization called the International Dark Sky Association. They're kind of the leaders. They're at the forefront in the fight against light pollution. And what they do is they work with different areas to help them become more dark sky friendly. And they don't just hand this certificate out to anyone that asks for it. You have to earn it. And part of that is you do have to be a dark area like Voyageurs National Park. As was mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, we just recently got our certification. And so that is part of it. You do have to be dark. That is a criteria. But there's more to it than that. For one, you have to work on a lighting management plan where you make a promise that by a certain point in time, this many lights will be more dark sky friendly. Additionally, we have to take actual quantitative measurements of darkness. And the way that you do that is you take this tiny little device over here, it fits in the palm of your hand. It's called a sky quality meter. And every single month, we have to go to the spots assigned to us, and we go out and we take actual measurements of darkness. And as far as what this actual number means, you don't have to worry about that. Just know that if you were to take this measurement in like the Twin Cities or New York City, and then you were to take a measurement in Voyageurs National Park or Boundary Waters, somewhere very dark, you see 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. So essentially that number tells you how dark or how light that place is. So that being said, we have to do this every single month and then report it to the International Dark Sky Association. That way we can't just take the certificate and then put like a Walmart up or something like that. We have to stay true to our promise, and we show this by submitting these numbers every month. And then another thing that we do is we have an educational component to it, which is where a large portion of my job comes in. We do dark sky presentations throughout the year in many different forms. And part of that is we do talk about the adverse effects of light pollution. Another part of it is I go out with a really cool laser pointer. If some of you haven't seen it before, it's essentially a giant lightsaber that shoots up into the sky, and you can trace out constellations with it. So I talk about star stories from across the globe and throughout time. And then another thing that I do is we bring out a telescope, and we look at really, really cool, beautiful objects through the telescope. And this picture is not the greatest one. Admittedly, I took it. But what I wanted to show here, this was a really cool memory for me. This was my first time, as well as most of the visitors in this picture, our first time ever seeing the Northern Lights. So you can kind of see that green light go underneath. And a lot of us were like, is that it? Is that it? We're not sure. And I pulled out my camera and I tinkered with the settings, and sure enough. So I want to capture this. And that's one of my favorite things about doing these presentations is having these cool and beautiful special moments with visitors, sharing the night sky with everyone. Oh, and this is another one. This one's a little bit better. Oh man, this was such a great night. The Northern Lights were going off like crazy. And sometimes you see pictures like this and you go, oh, that's just Photoshop, or it's just the way the camera sees it. And sometimes that's true. But in this picture, it really did look close to this. It was really just a really very bright green. You could literally see the reflection in the water. So it's not just a product of the camera in this instance. It really did look similar to this. What a cool night. So one other thing I want to mention about this organization is you'll notice it's called the International Dark Sky Association. So they don't just work with areas in the US, they also work internationally. And this is kind of an older map. It's been updated since then, but it's a global effort. So just something to keep on the radar. This is not just in the US, it is happening everywhere. And so with that said, I like to kind of just talk about some cool things that you can see in Voyageurs National Park, given our dark sky setting. Because there's a lot you can see here that you can't see in like a big city. So I like to kind of just present a calendar. I go up until about September of next year and just talk about some of the cool things to mark on your calendar to look out for. And the first one I like to bring up is actually the end of this year, and this is the Geminids meteor shower. Okay, the Geminids meteor shower is one of the best meteor showers of the year, and the reason for that is you can see so many meteors. You can see about 120 per hour, which is a tremendous amount. And you can only really see them in big cities for some of the brighter ones that flash across the sky. But to see like the true experience, to feel the true experience, you have to go out to a dark area. And this year in particular is pretty cool because not only is it in general one of the best meteor showers of the year, but during the peak of it, which happens to be the 13th and 14th, it coincidentally lines up with a new moon. And for those of you that don't know, the new moon is the time of the month where it's the darkest because the moon's out in the daytime and then it goes away at nighttime, giving us the darkest skies possible. So it just coincidentally lines up that the best meteor shower of the year lines up with the best time of the month to see it, which I think is just so great. And again, this one's called the Geminids. If you didn't know, our meteor showers are named after the constellation in which they appear to be emanating out from. That doesn't mean you have to look in that direction. You can pretty much look in any direction and you'll see it. And for those of you that are interested, this is where my brain always goes. I like to know, why do we have meteor showers? What the heck is going on there? How do we see these points of light just stripping across the sky? Well, the reason for it is in this diagram, we can see the planets of our solar system going these orbits around the sun. This blue orbit is the Earth. So as you know, we go around and around and around. Well, other things besides planets are also going around the sun. Take, for instance, this asteroid over here with this crazy name that I'm not going to try to pronounce because I forget how to do that. But it goes around as well. And we can see in this red orbit, it goes along. And as it does so, it leaves behind tiny little bits of rock and other material. It's blasting through space. It's kind of leaving a trail behind. So that's what's being left behind on this red trail. And as you can see, sometimes the orbit of Earth intersects with the orbit of the trail left behind by the asteroid or the comet. And so as those two kind of coincide, as Earth kind of blasts through this section of space with rock and other bits of material, it causes a lot of friction and it kind of just rips across the sky, it evaporates it. And that's why we have meteor showers. So that's why we have the Geminids, but other asteroids or comets have other paths. And that's why we have a bunch of them throughout the year. That's why they're predictable. That's why we know the exact dates in which they're coming up. Is we know the orbit of this thing coming through, we know our space and our orbit around the sun, and we know when those two are going to coincide. So just a cool little side bit of information. Again, this is happening December 7th through 17th, but the peak is happening on the 13th and the 14th. So kind of skipping ahead to next year, we have a really fun set of events for you. This is our big event called the Boreal Stargazing Week. Okay, the Boreal Stargazing Week takes place in Voyageurs National Park, and it may take place in other sections as well. We haven't solidified it yet. For example, last year it was in Voyageurs National Park, but also Boundary Waters. There were some different events happening on different days. So you can ignore these dates right here, 19 through 24, that was last year. This year will be the 12th through the 18th, or sorry, next year will be the 12th and the 18th. And this kind of celebration of the winter night sky was put together by a few different organizations. We have, of course, Voyageurs Conservancy, the Boundary Waters, National Park Service, U.S. Forest Service, and the Starry Skies North IDA. And so what this looked like, again, this was in February, and we had a lot of different things going on. We had winter snowshoe going on, where you get to snowshoe underneath the stars. We had educational programming, which was virtual and for all ages. We had literally, I forget the exact number, but like over 1,000 people tune in virtually. And so I gave one on light pollution. Astro Bob, if anyone knows who that is, he came and gave a presentation. And then over here, we have a wonderful teamwork between National Park Service, Voyageurs Conservancy, and STEAM in the Park through Expeditions and Education. They work with national parks all over the country, and they do different challenges for schools where they submit different challenges depending on what the park is. They have to solve a different problem. It's really cool if you haven't heard of it. In any case, they're out there live streaming on a frozen lake, which was really just a cool thing. We've never done anything like that before, but we got all the technology set in place. They're out there on a frozen lake and doing programming. Then, of course, at nighttime, we have to have a fire because it is really cold. Astro Bob is there setting up his telescope and just experience and enjoy the darkness and the stars together. The great thing about winter night skies, of course, it is bitterly cold. That's a minus, but the benefit is it starts really early. I think this is at like 7 p.m. Whereas in the summer, you have to wait literally till like 10 p.m. By 10 p.m. in June, it's like just starting to get dark. So that is the wonderful thing about winter night skies, is you go out earlier. In March, I did want to provide one that you can see even if you can't come up to a dark sky place. You could see this literally in the Twin Cities if you wanted to, and that is the lunar eclipse. I put a wrong date on here, I noticed, as of 5 seconds ago. March 25th, 2024. So next year, March 25th, 2024, take a look at the moon. It will literally turn red as it goes through Earth's shadow. So here's a little diagram. There's lots of words here. You don't need to pay attention to it. Really, the important thing here is that the moon goes around the Earth, and as it lines up just perfectly, the sun is always casting its light. The Earth is blocking it, and the moon is eclipsed. So a lunar eclipse is when the moon is being eclipsed. Literally, you can go out anywhere and see this. It's a really, really cool phenomenon for those of you who haven't seen it. But possibly the coolest of all space things to see is the total solar eclipse. And with the caveat, I do want to mention right off the bat, you won't see the true experience in Minnesota, but I figured it was too important to leave out. The total solar eclipse is when the sun is being eclipsed by the moon. Okay. Did anyone see the annular solar eclipse just a few nights ago? Give me like a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I think it might have been too cloudy. It was too cloudy up here. I tried, and it was overcast. But in any case, this one is a total solar eclipse. It's a bit different. It's a lot more rare than the one that happened a few nights ago or a few days ago. And I know you'll see news headlines all the time. hey, check out this thing. This is the first time in 40 years since we've seen it. It seems like every month one of those come out, but this one truly is a rare and beautiful and life-changing experience. It's very just a surreal experience. What happens is the moon is in front of the sun, it blocks it out, and all you can see is kind of this eerie glow above or around the moon and the sun, because again, the moon is just perfectly lined up around it. You see this plasma-y glow, and really trippy things happen when this goes on. Sometimes you can see stars. You can see actual stars because it's so dark. Animals start to behave really weirdly because they think it's nighttime all of a sudden. It really is just a magical moment. And again, the caveat, you can't see it in Minnesota. What you need to do is go along this thing called the Path of Totality, which this year it's along this black strip. And so you can Google specific cities you'd have to go to in order to get the true 100% total eclipse experience. I think I'm going to buy my ticket probably tomorrow. I think I'm going down to either Texas or Mexico. It really is worth checking out. And people go crazy over this. Hotels start to book out. Again, you can't see it up here. You can't see the full experience, but it is just too important to leave out. Next time this crazy thing will happen is 2044. So make your plans now if you're interested, or shoot me an email if you have any questions about it. The next big one to look out for, to mark your calendars, is we do our dark sky programming at Voyageurs National Park either in July or August. We haven't picked a start date yet, but it'll probably be mid or late July or early August. And so as I mentioned, Voyageurs is a really, really wonderful place to view the stars. And one thing I want to mention is we have a new telescope. This is a new telescope that we got earlier this year. And over here, what we have is a terrible picture of me, both in terms of the face I'm making, but also in the quality of the picture. But what I wanted to demonstrate here is the size of it. It's literally taller than me when it's standing up vertically. And I know it's hard to kind of to understand the true power of this. So I put this next slide here to hopefully demonstrate that. And actually, what I might do first is just talk a little bit about how telescopes work, or at least how this type of telescope works. You'll see that essentially what this telescope is it's a big tube with a giant mirror on the bottom and a tiny mirror on the top that's slanted. Okay, that's all these telescopes are. And the way that it works is as light enters from the top, it travels down the tube, it hits this giant mirror on the bottom, it gets reflected back up, it hits that slanty mirror, and then it gets transported to an eyepiece, which is over here, that gets magnified as an image. And then that's how you see it. That's all of these telescopes are. It's a big tube with two mirrors. And this mirror happens to be 18 inches across, which is really, really big. And to give you a sense of scale, we have these other telescopes over here, which are wonderful. I've used them for years. They're trusty, they're magnificent, but they really pale in comparison compared to this beast of a telescope, this 18-inch obsession telescope. And so I just want to demonstrate that even this kind of big telescope over here, which is 10 inches, has a 10-inch mirror at the bottom, this new telescope is more than 2 times as powerful as this one, and it's 5 times more powerful than this other really trusty telescope. Again, these are both fine telescopes. I've used them for years, but this one is just like on another planet. It's really just a beautiful instrument, and we are lucky enough. We actually got it donated to us by a really generous donator named Curtis Wong, and he's a web developer. So super thankful to have used this and to continue using it. It's really just a game changer. So the short version of that, if you kind of tuned out with all the different numbers being shot out there, big mirror means really great images through your telescope. The larger the mirror, the more light it gathers, and the better your image will be that you see. And just to show you some of the things that we looked at this summer, with the caveat that these are not pictures taken through this telescope, these were taken off of Wikipedia. This is the Andromeda Galaxy, over 2.5 million light years away. The farthest thing you can see with your naked eye, but it looks really wonderful through this new telescope. You can see star clusters. Star clusters are, stars are born in groups, and they're kind of born in two different types of groups. One of them is called an open star cluster, and these are hundreds of thousands of stars that are kind of loosely bound together. We can see one of those over here. You can see another one over here. This is the Perseus double cluster for anyone that's interested. Again, this is one type of way in which stars are born together. They're called open clusters. And then there's another way in which stars are born, which are called globular star clusters. This is probably one of my favorite ones to look at in the telescope. And again, while this is a Wikipedia image, this was taken with the Hubble Space Telescope, so we're not going to see this. But it is truly a beautiful thing to look at, even just with our telescope. You can see a bunch of different stars clustered together. It looks like a glitter bomb was dropped off, and you just dazzled with all these different stars. So again, this is a globular star cluster. And then, of course, some of the best things to look at, Jupiter with its banded horizons. You can also see some of its moons. They look like tiny little breadcrumbs around it. You really can see the banded horizons even with our telescope. And then, of course, this one wins everyone over. You can't look at Saturn and not be amazed. We can see Saturn through it. And what it will look like through our telescope, it'll look much smaller, but you can see the actual ring going around it. And for some reason, this always blows my mind. You can see the space in between the ring. So it looks like a tiny little sticker, but you can see an actual ring. You can look at it and go, wow, that is a tangible thing out there. That is a real thing floating out there in space. And I did check next year, we will be able to see it in the summer at reasonable hours. You don't have to be up at like 4 a.m. to see it. And then lastly, just to kind of wrap up the calendar on a cool thing to come to is our star party. We don't have a date picked yet, but it will be either in August or September. Last year's was in August, right near the new moon and the Perseid meteor shower. And this is also a gathering of different organizations, just like the winter stargazing event that I talked about. And we have a variety of different programming for all ages. This is a program I gave about the solar system where we scaled it down to a 100-foot string of rope, and we kind of visit each planet, showing the scale size as well as just learning cool things about the planets and their moons. This was a really great program, great for kids and for adults. Park Ranger gave a program about none other than Northern Lights. And to do that, she had all these different colors. It took the concepts, really complicated concepts, how the Northern Lights form due to Earth's magnetic field and the sun, and she condensed it to an educational program involved with dancing and waving around these different colored bands which represent different colors of the Northern Lights. So it was educational. She talked about the science of it, but also made it accessible to anyone that's interested. Ooh, this was a really cool addition. This is our 3rd annual Star Party, and this is the first time we've done this. We've partnered with Wilderness Inquiry, and they had canoe rides going out. So while all those other programs I talked about were happening, the canoe rides were happening simultaneously. Wilderness Inquiry came, and for those of you that don't know, they're kind of leaders in outdoors. They're all trained professionals, and they brought groups out on the water. So what we had was groups coming out for the evening. So we had sunset paddles, and not pictured here, we had nighttime paddles as well. So what a cool experience. You get to go out on the water underneath the stars with trained professionals too, so you can feel safe, because it can be a little bit scary if you're new to canoeing, you don't really know safety protocols. It's nice just to have that reassurance that you're going out with professionals. Additionally, we did have a park ranger on a boat just kind of slowly trailing behind just for extra safety protocol. So again, this was with Wilderness Inquiry. We had something called S'mores and Stories, which this is just a cute picture. She's eating s'more over here with it all over her face. But what this was we had story time related to stars and space, and we read children's books surrounding a fire and with the whole s'more station over here. Great for kids. Oh, we also had this great addition from Starry Skies North. They came to help us for the first time. For those of you who don't know who they are a wonderful organization. They really know their stuff. If you have any questions about light pollution, I'd be happy to answer. But if you have really detailed questions, these guys are like the experts in it. I really admire the work that they do. In any case, they came out to work with us. They had a table set up, and they talked about the adverse effects of light pollution. They had tabling, talking about their organization's mission, as well as an educational component where they had presentations going on. Last year, in 2022, we had Paul Bogard come out. If any of you have heard of this book before, The End of Night, it's a really, really good book if you're curious about light pollution, what it is, how it really affects everyone. It's written in a very accessible manner. This is my own personal copy. You can see it's been through quite a few travels based on the damage done to the cover. But we had the author come out, Paul Bogard, which was just absolute joy. He is an expert in light pollution and just a really great communicator. So we try to get special speakers to come out for the Star Party as well. Additionally, Astro Bob came out and gave his presentation. And then, of course, we have constellation tours. Here are those fancy laser pointers that I talked about. So rather than being like, hey, do you see that triangle up there? And then you have to pretend like you know what I'm talking about. I can literally point to it with a laser pointer. So this is really helpful. It's really a game changer to be with a ranger or some other staff, and you point out different constellations. And we try to make it a point to include stories from across the globe. So we do talk about Greek stories, but we try to jump around and be as inclusive as possible when we share these stories as well. Last year, I did have to include this. Last year, we were blessed with not one viewing of the Northern Lights, but 2 nights in a row during the Star Party. It was such an awesome just coincidence. You can't plan for a Northern Lights lineup when you plan for this literally 6 months before the event happens. This was just a fortuitous moment. So we had 2 nights of the Star Party. Both nights, the Northern Lights came out. Again, this was in 2022. This year, we didn't get Northern Lights. We got a few views of the stars. This is one taken by Astro Bob, but it was clouded over most of the time, which is why we have other programs to offer, such as the ones that I showed you earlier. We had all of those programs going on because this was just a small window of time that stars did open up. It was mostly clouded. There was a small group of people, really dedicated people who wanted to see the stars, and we stayed out for hours, even though most of the night was overcast. It did look like this for maybe 30 minutes or so, 30 to 45 minutes. And then as the clouds rolled in, there were signs of it was going to rain, and we were just in denial. We're like, no, we can wait it out. We can wait it out. And then I had to include this last picture because it's just so comical to me. It did start to rain, and so we had to just quickly put all this expensive equipment away. And then here's Todd from Starry Skies North with an umbrella over this very expensive telescope of Astro Bob's. The most dedicated of star viewers stayed out, and we all worked together as a group to quickly break the telescope down and safely put it away. Whew, that was a lot of information, huh? I appreciate you sticking through. I like to kind of just go over it again really, really quickly because, again, that was just so much information. We talked about Voyageurs Conservancy, how we're the official nonprofit partner and how we help the park out in many different ways through programming. We talked about light pollution and the adverse effects. We talked about how it affects animals, it affects human health, it erases our history and our cultural ties to the night sky, and it erases our sense of wonder. We talked about the International Dark Sky Association and how they hand out certificates to areas that are stewards of protecting the night sky, and how Voyageurs just recently got their designation. And then we talked about really, really just wonderful events throughout the next year. The Geminids meteor shower, Boreal Stargazing Week in February, the lunar eclipse in March, the solar eclipse in April, and then, of course, programming that we do all throughout the summer, where I'll be out there with my telescope, all the different cool things you can see. Then, of course, to wrap it up, our big event, the Star Party, which will happen in either August or September. We'll have a range of different activities for kids and for adults, including getting out on the water, s'mores and stories, working with partner organizations, educational programming, constellation stories, and hopefully a glimpse of the Northern Lights. Again, that was a lot of information. I really appreciate you sticking through and that you were all interested in learning about this in the first place. And I'll stick around for questions, comments, stories, anything to share. I'd be happy to listen and try my best to answer them.
So Jesse, there is a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Someone was wondering, and this is about the total eclipse.
Yeah.
They were wondering what time of day that total eclipse is likely to happen.
Yeah, totally. So it depends on where you are. For instance, in Texas, I think, because I'm planning on going to Texas too, I think, let me just double check. And what I will say about it, you do have to be in a very specific place. So even though it's passing through Texas, I'll pull up this map again of it. Even though we mentioned, these different states, there are specific cities within there. So for example, it's a little hard to see on this, it's passing near Austin, but even in Austin, which is like right on the border of it, you still have to drive like 60 miles or so north to be in that perfect little sliver of space. So make sure where you go, that you go to a very specific location, and that, you do your research, that you're not just close enough nearby. It'd be a shame if you traveled, if you like took a plane somewhere and you were close enough, but you didn't make it quite there. To answer your question though, it's sometime in the morning. Here we go. This is the one I was looking for. So for instance, in Mexico, around 9 or 10. The ones in Texas, around the afternoon. And check this out. A lot of these are only like 4 minutes long or so. So it's not like hours long when you have this big window. It really is a small sliver of time, which makes it all that much more rare, but also just kind of an amazing event if you make it.
I had a question for you, Jesse.
Yeah, totally.
So when you were talking about your events that are happening like in February, April, most of us, some of us probably aren't going to winter camp.
That's fair.
Right. So are there places to stay up there?
Yeah, there are hotels up here. I could send a list later if you're interested of all the different hotels up here. There are different hotels up here if anyone is interested. And also I'll mention, while we don't have an exact itinerary set up, we're likely to have a virtual component too. So if you still want to learn about dark sky stuff and you either it's too cold and you don't want to make the journey, it sounds like a good idea in October when it's still reasonable temperatures out, but come February you go, I don't want to go out, it's -20. Understandable. We'll probably have a virtual component as well.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, any other questions or recommendations or stories, literally anything. I'm reading some of the comments. Seems like a few of you have seen the total solar eclipse. Awesome. Last solar eclipse, 2017, I was stuck at an information desk. I worked at Bryce Canyon National Park, which was not on the path of totality, which is where it's the 100%. I think it was like 80% over there. But I was stuck at the front desk, giving information about trails and things like that. And I just wanted to be like, people, go outside. You can save your question for like literally the next hour. Come back. We got to go see this life-changing event. But then I did finally go out, and it was cloudy anyway. So it happens. Cool. Any other? I see some more. A lot of thank yous. Thank you all so much for coming.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for presenting, Jesse. This was fabulous, and I've seen several comments here thanking you for
fantastic
information. No, it was great.
Thanks for watching this Minnesota Rovers presentation. If you want to see more, please click on the link to our channel or the subscribe button below. Thank you.